Hello there. The UK is facing significant domestic challenges, including a housing crisis, an overstretched NHS, rising homelessness and increasing struggles for veterans and indeed the vulnerable in our communities. And yet, despite these pressing issues, the government under Keir Starmer's leadership has chosen to prioritise billions in funding for Ukraine's defence rather than securing the well-being of its own citizens. Now, I've seen it sparked a widespread frustration, with many questioning the protecting Ukraine borders seems to matter more than protecting the UK's. Now, one of the glaring contradictions in Starmer's policies in his stance on border security, the government is actively funding Ukraine's military efforts to resist invasion, and yet at the same time it refuses to take a firm stand on the ongoing crisis in Britain's own borders. Thousands of young foreign men are entering the country, the UK, illegally, putting immense strain on public resources, while Starmer's government seems either unwilling or unable to stop it. If sovereignty matters to Ukraine, why doesn't it matter for Britain? The government has repeatedly claimed there's not enough money. There's not enough money to properly fund NHS, build affordable housing or support British veterans, etc. However, it comes to funding foreign war, there seems to be an endless supply of taxpayers' money. The UK is sending billions in aid, military supplies and financial assistance to Ukraine, yet British families are struggling with the cost of living crisis. This raises an important question. Shouldn't the government prioritise the British people first, before sending money abroad? Then, by continuously pouring resources into a war, rather than pushing for peace, Starmer is not securing Britain's future. He's putting it at risk. Supporting a prolonged conflict in Ukraine increases tensions with Russia and escalates a global insecurity and instability. Meanwhile, the UK faces serious internal struggles that remain unaddressed. A leader's first duty should be to protect and improve the lives of its own citizens. Yet Starmer's actions suggest otherwise. The British public is being heavily influenced by mainstream media and political propaganda, shaping the narrative in favour of a continued war funding while discouraging calls for peace. Public discourse is dominated by one-sided perspectives where questioning the war effort is often dismissed or even labelled a disloyalty. Instead of presenting balanced debates, media outlets tend to promote a stance that justifies ongoing support for Ukraine, while ignoring the voices advocating for diplomatic solutions. This manipulation of public perception prevents a genuine conversation about alternatives to prolonged conflict. Furthermore, Western governments and media have worked together to frame a war in Ukraine as a simple battle of good versus evil, and that's leaving little room for nuance. This oversimplified narrative prevents people from considering the broader implications, such as the economic strain on the UK taxpayers, the danger of escalating tensions with Russia, and the long-term sustainability of constant military aid. Meanwhile, the other global conflicts, such as the Middle East or Africa, are now receiving far less attention, raising questions about selective interventionism. Despite the clear need for a peaceful solution, few politicians or media outlets are actively pushing for negotiations. This reluctance stems from multiple factors. The financial interests in the defence industry. The war has been highly profitable for the arms industry, with Western defence contractors benefiting from continued supplies of weapons to Ukraine. Then we have the geopolitical strategy. Weakening Russia has been a long-term goal of NATO and Western powers, and supporting Ukraine serves this purpose. Then we have the political risk. Any leader advocating for peace risks being labelled as weak or pro-Russian, discouraging politicians from taking a diplomatic stance. And of course we have public misinformation. Many people are unaware that diplomacy and negotiations have been attempted and dismissed, leading to the false perception that the war is the only solution. Now, the British people deserve a government that puts their interests first. One that secures its own borders, funds its own healthcare system and supports its own struggling communities before engaging in costly foreign interventions. It's time for a leadership that focuses on the needs of the UK, not endless overseas conflicts. If this government truly believes in sovereignty and security, then it must start at home. Protecting another country while failing to protect one's own is not leadership, it's betrayal. The UK should be advocating for a peaceful resolution in Ukraine, using diplomacy to end the war rather than prolonging it to the expense of us, its own citizens. The focus should shift from fueling conflicts abroad to addressing the urgent needs of the British people before it's too late. Take care.